everyone. How are you all doing? Welcome back again to Hour of Healing. If this is your first time, we are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Find us, share it with your family members. As usual, we are here to discuss a thought provoking topic, which we begun last couple of weeks. The topic is, what are you becoming? So, this is actually the continuation of, I think it's part what, three or so, yeah, I'm here with Dr. Joe as usual. My name is Candace. I am your host. Dr. Joe, welcome back again.
Thank you so much, Sister Candice.
How is everyone? How is the family?
We're doing very well. How about yourself?
Good, good, good. The weather is actually
Wonderful.
beautiful today. So yeah, I hope you're all ready. Get your pens and papers ready. As usual, I'm gonna let Dr. Joe give a little brief summary of what we have talked about. Not everything or not too much, so that you will go and listen because it's so much that it's gonna help us. It's something that you need to listen to really get the lessons and everything that you need to know from it. So, what are you becoming? But we are actually going to talk about how to become. All right.
Yes.
So, before we get into it, I hand it back to Dr. Joe to, brief us off of the stuff that he has already, brought to the table or taught us in the past episodes.
Yes, thank you so much, Sister Candice, for the opportunity, as usual, to be able to engage with our audience and by the grace and wisdom of God, be able to bring healing to our audience and also to ourselves. What are you becoming is a topic that we've been considering over the past 3 weeks, today being the third episode. And the main thing that I had talked about when we talk about this topic, Sister Candice, that the theme of becoming is very recurrent in our lives, that in everything that we do, there is this theme of us becoming something. And there is a lot of emphasis that are placed on even knowing our purpose in life, for instance. So, in the first two sections, what we talked about was mainly engineered to help us realize that it's not enough to know what your purpose is. And so, if you recall, one of the things we talked about was the fact that knowing your purpose and accomplishing it requires hard work. It requires sacrifices. And we live in a day and an age where the word sacrifice is something that we really don't want to hear. We don't want to sacrifice our time. We don't want to sacrifice our comfort. We don't want to sacrifice our money. We don't want to sacrifice even our rights to accomplish the common or better good. And so, what are you becoming is our way of answering one of life's pressing questions, and that is to what end? You know
Mhm.
your purpose, and so to what end? You're doing everything to grow your business for what or to
Right.
what end? And so that is really what our conversation the first two times was centered upon. And so, Mr. Candice, I want our audience to really be intentional about paying attention to some of the things that, by the grace of God, we were able to share with them. We talked about the areas of importance and then the things that sponsor our need to become. Because you can know that it's important to become something, but why? What is
Mhm.
it that is driving it? And so that's really some of the things that, by the grace of God, we try to address in our first two sections for our audience.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. And I can't help but think that, it's very interesting how like some people have this notion of just go with the flow, like
Mm,
I'm
mm,
just doing, I'm just living by the day, right? But then going with the flow has to have it factor, like what Dr. Joe mentioned, because that is
yes.
the driving force when you are not seeing results, when you are not seeing expectations, like things are not meeting to your expectations. So it's good to go with the flow because I think that's like the motto of this our generation, just go with the flow, just be free, live your life, that kind of situation. But in spite of all of that, in the process of us living our life, being free, going with the flow, you have to be intentional about your movements because you will become something, whether
Yes.
whether you like it or not, whether
Yes.
you've purposed to
Yes.
be or not. Yeah, so good or bad, you will become something. So yeah, it's good. So, without wasting time today, I want us to just get right into today's subtopic, which is how do we become, right? How do you become what you're striving for? How do you, keep pushing to be the person you have, fixated your eyes on as a role model? How do we become? So, first, though, usually as we all do, we do on this platform to break the topic down to the level where even a grade six person can understand. So yes, so I'll hand it back to Dr. Joe to give us a brief of what that may entail. So with that understanding, we can dive into what we want to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sister Candice. And yes, how do we become, right? That is the all important question because now, by the grace of God, in week one, we looked at the areas of importance. In week two, we looked at the things that influences or sponsors our need to become. And so the question then becomes now that I know all these things, that I know it's important for me to start making choices. Because
Mm,
remember, one of our fundamental concepts for this conversation is that if you don't make your own choices to become, you will be a victim of somebody's choices for you to become. So whether you are actively participating or you are not actively participating, you will become something. And so the question is, how do we become, right?
mm,
And before we even get into the various ways that we become, Sister Candice, it's very important that our audience understand a few things. That in your attempt to become, it's not all dependent on you. But for the sake of our conversation today, to be able to try to center the conversation, I will be focusing on the part that really depends on us. Yes, at some points we will try to chip in from here and there, but that is really what we are going to be focusing on. Once you know all these things, it's very important that you learn or you begin to process the fact that you have a major role to play in your becoming because your convictions in life at some point must be greater than your feelings. I
okay.
take that again, that your convictions in life, what you believe at some point in your life, must be greater than your feelings because the things that happen around us will cause us to feel a certain way at all times.
Mm,
But if you are just in tune with your feelings, you will get to a point where you will give in.
mm,
That is why I say your convictions, what you believe, that I believe God has given me grace for this. At some point in my life, in order for me to enter the realm of becoming, must be greater than my feelings. Sister Candace, this is important for our audience to keep in their mind because if you don't have that conviction or that strong belief in what you are becoming,
mm,
your feelings will talk you out of what you are becoming.
true.
Your friend will at some point give up on you or say something that will make you regret the process or the efforts you have even put in becoming. I may be even taking it too liberal. Your mentor, the one you are looking up to help you become, can say something that if care is not taken, if your convictions or your belief is not greater than your feelings, you will give up. I don't want to keep going on this summary, but it's very important our audience understand this before we dive into the ways that we become. Because, like Candace, I have come to learn something in this life about God, who I believe has given me grace and life. That God will not give you so much proofs or he will not give you so much evidence to the point of you not having faith in him.
Mm.
Because whenever you are talking about someone doing something, we talk about, I want God to give me evidence, right? Oh, I want God to show me. I want to be sure. I want to be convinced. God will not convince us to the point of us not having faith. And
Mm.
for us to be able to have faith in him, there has to be an unknown. There has to be that which we hope
Right,
for.
right, right, right.
Make sense? There has to be that thing that we are hoping for, that thing that we don't know, but our hope is in that. And if we're going to do this life in order to become truly what we have to become, our convictions is what will help us keep that faith. Our
Mm.
feelings will not.
Mm.
And so let's get right in there.
Well, I think that's going to be a problem because I think we are driven by our feelings. We are driven by our emotions more than anything. Even when we make a decision, and I'm speaking for Gen Zs and millennials of this era. Yeah, I mean, that's what this is for. But I even when you have a decision, it's like we go off of, I don't feel right about this. I don't know
Hmm.
if many of you have, heard this before. I don't feel
Hmm.
too good about this, but this is a decision that you have sat down to think it through, analyze whatever, and you're like, no, this may be good, but then you're like, I don't. It's like I don't feel good about it, right? And then there are decisions you don't ever even think about it, and you're like, I feel great about this. I'm boom, and then you dive right into it. So I think this may be a problem because we are more driven. We are a society that's more driven by our feelings and our emotions than convictions and beliefs, right? So
Well,
I don't.
well, that is why, excuse me to say, or I'm sorry to say, but that is why so many of us are in trouble.
Yeah,
Because we are driven by our feelings. Zacchaeus, this is actually interesting because the next time we actually sit down to do a recording, the topic we will be talking about is check your appetite. And
right.
in check your appetite, we will be talking mainly about our emotions, our feelings. And I will help our audience to understand when we do that recording that a lot of the things that we feel ought to be sponsored by what we believe. The
Mm,
very moment your feelings become greater than your beliefs, you
mm,
are heading for trouble.
true.
Because, like I said, the system of this world is engineered in a way to cause us to feel certain emotions. And the emotions that we feel, though may not be wrong in itself, depending on what is sponsoring that emotion, it can be wrong. I think I told you off camera last time after we were done recording the second part of this conversation that there is a difference between truth and what is true. That everything that is true ought to be sponsored by truth.
Right.
But if you doing something or saying something that is true, is your truth. It doesn't necessarily mean that that is the truth of the matter. So let's say something happened, you were not there, and someone came and reported to you. From that moment, everything you say is true about the situation that happened.
Mm,
But the truth of that situation only lies in the eyewitnesses of those situations.
mm, true.
And so you can do a lot of things because of your emotions, but if what is sponsoring it is not out of
That's true.
truth, it's wrong. And so, Zacchaeus, I want us to be able to get into these points, but it's very important that we address this because there are so many things that are true in our world today by worldly standards, and
Mm,
it's leading believers, Christians, a lot of us astray because we know them to be true, but from whose lens? It's
mm,
only true based on worldly standards. If you look at the standard of truth, which is the Spirit of God Himself,
mm,
those things don't hold to be true.
mm,
I don't know if this is making sense.
mm,
And so you will hear some pastors justify immoral behavior.
mm,
And the reason why they justify it is because we are all men, we are flesh, we all have desires. which is true. But the very moment you became a child of God, what sponsors or what drives you in life is no longer your flesh, but a spirit that has been resurrected within you.
Mm,
And that spirit is the spirit of truth.
mm-hmm,
And so justifying an immoral behavior because of your flesh nature is no longer truth,
mm-hmm.
but by societal or worldly standards is true.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we can dwell on this, Sister Candace, for a long time because, like you said, I agree with you that this is a problem for our generation because we have not taken the time to stay in the place of prayer, in the place or the school of the Spirit for Him to work on us. And so we pick anything and run with it.
That's true.
So, my dear audience, before we get into how we become, know that everything that is true has to be sponsored by truth. Or let me say it this way, know that everything that comes out of truth is true, but
Mm-hmm.
not everything that is true comes out of truth.
Yeah.
And if you don't seek the grace and the discernment of God to know the distinction, you will spend yourself doing so many things that are true. But at
But
the end of the day, you will be told, "Depart from me, I do not know you." And you will say, "I did all these things that are true." But He will tell you that you didn't do them out of truth.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this is very dangerous. And I think I like the part where you said, this is what some men of God try to, I don't even want to say convince or like have this they put out this explanation, maybe I should say, that we are all human and all this kind of things, but I think it serves a purpose of danger because we don't know how to differentiate our humanity from what is
Mm,
expected of us,
mm,
right?
mm.
Because I'm human, like, and you know, we'll be honest with you because this is hour of healing. Sometimes Dr. Joe is not in the right space of mind. Sometimes I'm
Nope.
not. You know,
Nope.
literally, sometimes we sit here and it's like, God, you have to take over because it's like where my mind is at, where my emotions is at, but there's an expectation, right? So my
Hmm.
humanity is pulling me down mentally or emotionally. But then what is expected of me is always different. And that is what we are not getting in this society. So we merge the two. If my humanity wants to sleep all day, then yeah, so be it. That
Yeah,
is
it's
the
my
case of
right.
that. That's my reality, or that is my, that's
My
what should
right. It's my right to sleep all day. Who are you to tell me
happen.
not to sleep all day?
Just live your life, right? Yes, and these things are so cliche, but it's like we don't think about them. But yeah, we have to be able to know what, because no matter what, your humanity will always be there, like, and it will serve its purpose in your life.
Absolutely.
And if you
Absolutely.
don't know how to draw that line for it, that will be your driving force rather than your
Hmm.
conviction. So let's get right into it. What are the steps of becoming, if you will?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sir Candice, for that piece. And I am looking at a few notes that, by the grace of God, I've been able to jot down here. And there are about five total points. So we will probably address the first point today, and then we will do the other four next week and finish up this topic as a whole. But I really want our audience to understand why we sometimes drive some of these things in. We really depend on God to help us during our recordings. And so when something of urgency comes in our spirit, it becomes something that we believe God wants us to focus on and hone in that topic. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we've been doing this for 3 seasons now, right? And so definitely there are a lot of things that, by the grace of God, we've been able to touch on that well, or should bring healing to many. But the first thing, or the first way, Sister Candice, that we become is by following others.
That helps us to become.
Yes, the first way in our quest to become, or how we become, the first way is following others. Following others. And following others is something that in our world today becomes one of the things that people frown against or frown upon. But in every facet of life, or in every area of our lives, following others become one of the cardinal ways we become. Why? Because the things or what we are meant to be, what we are pursuing to become, in most instances, if not always, has already been overcome by somebody. Somebody has already accomplished what you are hoping to accomplish in life. Your destiny is not the same as somebody else's destiny, but to in order for you to actualize your destiny, there is a huge component of your destiny actualization process
Mm-hmm.
that is dependent on somebody else who has already actualized their destiny. And so it becomes very, very important. Two things I want to make clear here before we even dive into it, Sister Candice, that when I talk about following others, because we have spent so much time in talking about relationships for help, I want you to understand that this is not it. When we talk about helpers, yes, you can follow helpers, but your helpers don't necessarily have to be believers.
Okay.
But the people you are following to become must be a believer if you intend to stay with God.
Mm.
Your helper, I repeat, can be an unbeliever. As a matter of fact, most of us, we are struggling in life today because we turned away a helper that God sent to us who was an unbeliever. And that's why we are struggling. Let's get that fact clear. But when we talk about becoming, the process of following others is very different from help. What they are is what you are becoming. And so when you look at an example of Jesus when he was calling his disciples, he said, "Follow me, and I will make you." In other words, what he was saying to the then fishermen and the people was, if you will follow me,
Bam.
everything that I am is what I will sponsor you to become.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you make the error of following the wrong person, you will become wrong. I believe it's in the book of Proverbs that says that walk with the wise and you will be wise. But the companion of fools suffers harm, which means that the people you follow automatically is who you are.
Mm.
I was having a conversation with a man of God, and he said something that was very powerful. He said that every person in life is the average of their friends. That the people that you associate with, you are the average of them. And so if you associate with 100 people and 90% of them are wise, or 90% of them are entrepreneurs, business minded people, people who are forward thinking, because when you average 90 and 10, you will lean more towards business sidedness, entrepreneurship, you will be forward thinking. If, on the other hand, in your case, you have 10 people around you and 7 of them are gossips, automatically you are a gossip,
Mm.
because the average of your immediate surrounding is who you are. It's not who you are becoming, it's who you are.
Wow.
That's the reason why you are able to fit in that group. And
Mm.
so, following others is the biggest or one of the biggest ways that I want our audience to understand. What I wrote here is the one you follow trains you to become equal or a more version of themselves.
A better version,
Not a better version,
but a
but
more.
more of them. So
Hmm.
if they are wicked, you will be more wicked. If they are generous, you will be more generous. They
Okay.
don't train you to become a better version of themselves. That is a misunderstanding, Sister Candace, that we have. That we think that the people we follow in life train us to become a better version of them. No, they train us to become a more version of them because a better version of wicked is good.
Ah, I see.
Uh,
And
uh,
you won't do that. A wicked
And
mind will not do that.
yes, a wicked mind will never train you to become a good mind. So you're
Mm.
not becoming a better version of the person you are following. You are just becoming more of what they are.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And so, my dear audience, the next time you are following someone, these are some of the things that you have to ask yourself. What is in them that I want to be?
Hmm.
And what is in them that I want more of? Because at the end of the day, if you have the understanding that you will be more of what is in them, then you will think twice
You check yourself.
in choosing the one you follow. Outside Jesus' example, we look at someone like Paul. He says, emulate me or follow me as I
Yes.
follow Christ, which means that the person you are following is also following someone.
They should be, or they are.
I will say, Sister Candice, they are, but if they aren't, they should
Mm.
be following someone because remember what we talked about in the first part of our conversation. If you settle, greed eventually will fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I will explain it this way. That Sister Candice, I find that the most effective of mentors are the ones who are actively learning.
Mm.
That if your mentor is not learning to improve themselves to be more of who they are, you become limited.
True.
And there is also that idea or that consciousness, though we are not talking about that today. I want to chip that in here, that there is a responsibility that comes to the one who is being followed.
Hmm.
That when you know who is following you, that helps you do certain things or manage certain things. But
Yeah.
that's really not the core of our conversation today. Our focus today is on the person doing the following.
Mm.
Do you realize that if you are following the right person and you turn away from them too soon, you fail?
You have failed.
No, you will fail.
Okay.
That is why it's so important to really understand the foundation we gave about what is true and truth.
Right.
An example that comes to my mind is someone like Lot. When Lot was following his uncle Abraham, you realize that everything was going well for him. But the
Mm.
very moment he lost sight of the fact that his becoming is because of who he is following, he started going downhill. As a matter of fact, when you read the book of Genesis, Sister Candace, from the moment that Lot went away from the person he was following, we did not hear anything about him again. The next time we heard about him, he was captured. He
Mm.
was being taken into slavery. After that time, we didn't hear about him again. The other time, the second time, this time around, we hear about Lot was the destruction of the city that he was living in.
Mm.
I say this for our audience to understand the importance of the person we are following in our becoming.
Mm.
So, this is where I say that we have a huge responsibility, right?
Mm.
That if you follow wrongly, you are in trouble.
Mm.
If you are following the right person, but you turn away too soon, again, you are in trouble.
Mm.
And so it's imperative that we know who we are following and when to stop following.
Mm. And how do you know that?
So discernment is one of the ways that you know this. The other is knowledge. Knowledge. So the amount of knowledge you acquire from them sponsors what you need to do as far as when you need to start following is concerned. Because the truth is, Sister Candace, there are people who are still following other people
That they
that
should
they
have
are not
left.
learning anything from.
Hmm.
They
Right.
should have left because they are not learning anything from them.
Yeah, their season is past.
Yes.
And I like to pitch in here. I think in my personal experience too, when you mentioned that when Paul said, "Follow me as I follow Christ," right? And the need for whoever you are following to follow someone if they are not, right? So I think a person can also take heed to who the one they are following is following, because
Correct.
I think it can come into play in the area of truth and what is truthful, because if you are following someone, you have to pay attention to what is influencing them. What is
Yes.
your sponsor, right? And I
Yeah.
think the key ways of knowing when to exit when your time is up is when you realize that what is influencing them or what they are following
Mm,
is not going in line with what is truthful, right?
yes.
So
Yes.
I think that's also another thing. Besides discernment, you can, just observe whoever you are following and see if they are still keeping in line. Though you are the one following, but you could still check the one you are, your leader or whoever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
I think that can be one thing too that we can like in my personal life, that was when I realized I need to start
Mm,
seeing God's face to exit from a
mm,
place. When I realized that the one I'm following is going away from what I know to be
mm,
truthful.
mm,
So yeah,
mm.
yeah. So I think that's one of the things.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Sister Candice. And before we wrap up on our section today, I want to finish up on the following others so that we can kind of exhaust this. So, how do you follow others, right? And why am I
Right.
stressing the importance of following others? It's important to know who you're following because the way you follow others is through surrender, that for you to effectively benefit from the person you are following, you must surrender to them. So,
Mhm.
whether it's a deity, a wife, a child, a boss, whoever you are following, you must surrender to them. And surrender in this sense does not come out of compulsion. Surrender in this sense comes out of responsibility, that
Mm,
you surrender to them because they have a responsibility to train or to teach you.
right.
If you don't surrender, my dear audience, you might think you're following, but you're not truly following.
And that was one of my questions. I was going to ask, is it possible to follow someone that you have not submitted to?
No,
Mm,
because if you don't submit, you will reject what they are training
mm,
you to be. So, submission or surrender is very, very key when it comes to following others. Go back to when we were talking about feelings and our beliefs or convictions. You will find that what they are training you to be, in most instances, if they truly training you to be more or better of you, will
mhm.
be contradictory to what you are feeling like. So your belief in them, which sponsors your submission to them, is what will help you be able to go with what they are training you to be.
Mm, is that what we call like they're rebelling against their leader, or like can that be in that?
I think it will fit in there, but I think rebellion usually comes at a point after you have submitted to some degree. Because if you are not truly following, then you will not be able to rebel.
Because you
You
never
re-
follow.
Yes. So I think rebellion can come in here, but it will be something later. And the reason is because the second way or the other way that you follow others is through obedience.
Right.
And
Okay.
so rebellion will be disobedience.
Okay. Okay.
And if you're going to become what you are following to become, you must obey the one you are following.
True.
And so if you don't pick the one you are following well, if you don't do your homework,
Hmm.
now you see how this can be very consequential,
Right.
because you will spend the rest of your life obeying the wrong person.
Hmm. And then that is where we make the conclusion. For example, all men are like this, or all pastors are this way, or
Yes,
like that's when conclusions are made because we follow the wrong person.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I think I will give one or two more quick points in the way we follow so that we will be able to wrap up for our section today. And we also follow through consistency or discipline.
Hmm.
That in order to follow others, you must be disciplined. If
Okay.
you don't discipline yourself, you cannot follow, because there are so many things that will be attractive that you will not find in the person you are following.
Mm.
And
Mm.
if you are not disciplined, you will be distracted by the attractions
Around.
that you will find. Mr.
Mm.
Candace, do you know what a disciple really means? So, in the days of Jesus, right, when we talk about somebody discipling another person, it was not really just about teaching them the laws of God or anything. In those days, when they talked about the word disciple, or when we even take the actual word disciple from its roots, it has to do with making somebody be you. So
Mm.
in those days, when the Bible said that we see the way you act, and you people are people of the way, which is what they called Christians, what they were saying is, we see the man Jesus in you, that the disciples or the people had become like Jesus.
Mm.
So when you follow someone, the goal of following is to be made like that person. And so you look in our lives today, and even in our businesses, look at corporate America, for instance, you will often find that the boss or the CEO and their closest intern have the same mannerisms. They talk the same way, they dress the same way, they act the same way, they conduct themselves in a certain way. It's not because they are blindly imitating them. No, they're not blindly
Yeah.
imitating them.
Yeah.
They are becoming what they are pouring into them to be. A good intern should be able to do the work of the one that they are following when their training is complete. And so, if you are not disciplined, there are so many other trainers around. The one you are following is not the only person that can be followed.
True.
There are other people who can be followed around the one you are following. And if you don't discipline yourself, you will be distracted by the training somebody else is giving their followers. And you will think, in most instances, that the grass is greener on that side.
Hmm.
And so there are a lot of us who, in following others, because of the lack of this discipline virtue, our following has either been prolonged, or we have exited, but our following was not complete.
Hmm.
But truly, Sister Candace, I don't want to keep belaboring this point, but the truth is, if you follow me, and for, let's say, 3 years, because Jesus was with his disciples for 3 years, so let's use that as the benchmark. In 3 years, if you go somewhere where they have seen me before and they don't recognize me in you, then you are not following right.
Mm. Mm. And this thing you are saying is God is very like he's an interesting man because
Mhm.
it's so weird. Like I see like pastors, like sometimes I'm watching pastors preaching, right?
Mhm.
Literally, it's like I can see the one they listen to often.
Yes,
Like you can see in the way they are
exactly.
conducting, they're not even thinking about it. The way they are emphasizing on certain words and certain consonants, it's like Like, wait a minute, you get what I mean? And honestly, I don't think anybody purposes to do that, but it's so weird. Like, it always happens. It's like there are
Absolutely.
mannerism, like you saying, like. And I remember I was talking to another man of God, and I think like people have come to him and told them, "Oh, you preach like this person, you preach like this person." They're like, "It's I don't even understand it because I just came in that person's life, right? They just started following that, that other man of
Mm,
God, and it
mm,
was just within a short period of time. He was already a pastor. It's not like he groomed him or anything. And
correct.
but it's like within that short time, it's like when he preached, everybody says he's preaching like the one,
Yes.
and it's a very I think it's most like it's very
So
spiritual
let
and
me give you a personal example on this, talking about preaching. So many years ago, my senior pastor at that time will send me to churches that he had been or he was supervising to go preach. And this was, I mean, I was very young then. I think I was probably in my early 20s. But I went to one particular church to preach on a Sunday that he was scheduled to preach there. But something happened just that morning, 2 hours before, and he asked me to go. Sister Candace, I had a family member in that congregation. I went to this church to preach. And then when I had returned home, my senior pastor called me and said, Joe, you're not going to believe the call I just got. And I said, what call? And then he says, like 4 or 5 of the leadership team of that church and 5 people in the congregation, including your own family member, called me. And what they said was, as you stood there and you were preaching, they could see you. And so they know that it's a small boy who is preaching. But the words and the sound was my voice and my words.
mm,
He said, they told me that from today, I should just send you to come preach to them because you have more energy. But that was the only difference. That is a young boy with
standing there,
more energy compared to the senior pastor we know who is more calm, but
right?
the sound, the words, the voice sounded like me. And
Mm,
so I wanted to commend you. This is what my spiritual father at that time told me. And Sir Candice, believe you me, I had not been following him for more than a year.
yeah,
Tops.
it's interesting.
What I want our audience to understand is when you follow right, there must be evidences of the one you are following in you. And so if you want to be the next multi-billionaire,
Follow well
find a billionaire and follow them. Not from a distance, because
and
you must
flow.
surrender and you must commit to them and obey them as well.
Yes, yes. And as we wrap up today's discussion, is we didn't think it would get to this far, but here we are as usual. It is hour of healing after all. But when I was listening to you, I was thinking to myself, if you are not becoming, then you are not following, right?
Yes.
Because here's a
Yes.
situation where people literally get into of a leader's life a year, with a few months, even 1 month, then you literally can see like it's like a replication of that person.
Mm,
So
mm.
if people are not attesting to the one you are following in you, you are not
You are not
following.
following.
You are not following.
Absolutely.
You are
That's
probably
powerful.
just learning some, lessons, taking some few notes, but you have
Mm,
not
mm.
connected your spirit to follow because that do happen. People listen to some men of God just to take notes, just
Yes.
to learn,
Yes.
but they are really not following, so you will not see them in them.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm,
so I think
mm.
that's a sure testament of you really following someone that you become. And
Absolutely.
that is the same thing that goes back to, Jesus Christ. If we are not seeing Jesus in you, then you are not really following.
Yes. Yes. You're
So
not
yeah,
following.
we'll wrap it up today, Dr. Joe. If you have a few words to sum up today's hour of healing, what are you becoming? And the sub theme today that we spoke about is how to become. So that it's been powerful.
Mr. Candice, thank you so much. And I mean, we will be continuing. Like I said, I just looked and it's actually 6 points that I listed, but probably I'll give five. So I want us to just continue that so we will be able to wrap up from there. So don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and also if you want to follow the videos are every week made available on YouTube under the subheading Joe Deborah Hour of Healing. So either way, Hour of Healing with Joe Deborah, or if you go to my personal YouTube page, Joe Deborah, you will be able to find the videos available there. You will see Sister Candace's expressions and her mannerisms when we are going through these recordings. God bless you so much for tuning in. We will bring you the concluding part on this humongous conversation. What are you becoming next week? God bless you. Bye bye.
Bye.